Why do defense attorneys often recommend refusing field sobriety tests?
So there's a lot of reasons we tell people not to do field sobriety testing. Field sobriety testing is actually phase 3 in a DUI investigation. So after the officer is done observing how you were driving and done observing you yourself, they'll often put you through field sobriety testing to gather more evidence for a DUI arrest. What they're looking for is things like your balance, your central clock, trying to determine whether or not you have the clearness of mind to operate the motor vehicle. By taking away the field sobriety testing, they don't gather that initial evidence against you. And that is why we generally recommend not doing the field sobriety testing and declining to do so.
Are field sobriety tests required during a DUI stop in Tennessee?
No, field sobriety tests are not required on a DUI stop in Tennessee. In Tennessee, police officers are trained on 3 standardized field sobriety tests: the horizontal gaze nystagmus test, the walk and turn, and the one-leg stand. When you're stopped by the police, it may seem like you have no choice in doing these tests. However, Tennessee law says that there is no consequence for refusing these tests. This is distinct and different from a chemical test under the implied consent law, where there are separate punishments for refusing to do that testing. And that is why, as defense attorneys, we suggest not agreeing to perform field sobriety tests, as it only gives the officer more evidence in your case.
Is refusing field sobriety tests the same as refusing a breath or blood test?
No, it's different in 2 ways. The first of which is that there's a law in the state of Tennessee, the implied consent law most people know about, that there is a consequence for refusing blood or breath. There is no law in the state of Tennessee, no consequences for refusing field sobriety tests, other than that you'll likely be arrested, because officers have no choice other than to arrest you, but you're going to be arrested most likely if you do the test as well. The second way is that there's also an additional law that many people don't know about as far as breath and blood testing, that a prosecutor can tell a jury that your refusal is most likely because you were scared of what the blood test would show. And so therefore they can tell a jury that the results were likely going to harm you in some way. It's not the same with field sobriety tests. There's no such law. And therefore those are the 2 main differences between breath and blood refusal and field sobriety tests, is that there is no law in the state of Tennessee requiring field sobriety tests, and there is no consequence for refusing that field sobriety test by law.
Can sober people fail field sobriety tests?
Yes, sober people can and oftentimes do fail standardized field sobriety tests. This is because there are several factors that can affect someone's ability to adequately perform these tests that are wholly independent from impairment. Factors such as physical conditions, mental conditions, the environment, even being properly instructed by the officer can all have an effect on someone's ability to perform these tests, and that is why we generally advise people to not consent to perform these tests.
How does refusing field sobriety tests affect a DUI defense strategy?
Refusal for field sobriety tests affect the strategy in that it allows us to potentially argue a motion to suppress your blood and motion to suppress your arrest itself. And the reason for that is that the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration teaches officers the reasons for doing field sobriety tests, that it prevents an arbitrary decision to arrest, and it also allows an officer to articulate the reasons for concluding that someone is DUI. The inverse of that becomes true if you refuse field sobriety tests, in that officers are then making an arbitrary decision to arrest, and they also do not have those specific reasons for concluding that you are DUI. Well, reasonable suspicion required to request field sobriety tests in the first place is specific articulable facts. A level above that is probable cause, more likely than not that you are DUI. And so if they don't even have a reasonable suspicion, those specific facts for concluding you're DUI, how do they get to that elevated level of probable cause? Is going to be the argument for a DUI attorney when you refuse field sobriety tests, and just gives us a reason to get the case resolved potentially through one of those motions, potentially getting the case dismissed or the blood results suppressed against you.
How should a driver refuse field sobriety tests in a respectful way?
So there's no one clear way to refuse field sobriety testing, but the easiest way to do it without causing any issues is just tell the officer politely, respectfully, I would not like to perform these tests. No need to be aggressive. No need to ask them why they want to do it. Just decline it. You have an absolute right to do so.
Can you refuse field sobriety tests without getting in trouble?
Unfortunately, if you are pulled over and accused of DUI, you're already in trouble. You're very likely going to be arrested whether you do field sobriety tests or don't do field sobriety tests. The difference is when we talk about trouble, we talk about the short term versus the long term. In the short term, if you're going to be arrested for DUI, whether you do field sobriety tests or not, the benefit of not doing it is that you condense that investigation from 30 to 45 minutes, which the bulk of that is field sobriety tests, to probably 2 to 5 minutes of a very short interaction with that officer, which leads to the long-term trouble that you potentially could be in with a DUI. Well, a conviction requires mandatory jail time, mandatory loss of license, and fines and classes that you have to do. If there's less evidence against you to convict you of DUI by refusing to do field sobriety tests, there's a stronger likelihood of avoiding the long-term trouble by increasing the likelihood of avoiding that DUI, and therefore a potential conviction of a DUI.
Can a DUI case be dismissed if there are no field sobriety tests?
So the lack of field sobriety tests alone is generally not going to be enough to get a DUI dismissed. The reason that we recommend you not doing the tests is because of the distinct phases in a DUI investigation. So in phase 1 and phase 2, they're looking for reasonable suspicion, which is just clear and articulable facts that they can detain you, interact with you, and extend a traffic stop. The reason that we tell you not to do them is because in order to arrest you and potentially get a search warrant for your blood, is an officer needs probable cause. The field sobriety test, at least based on the NHTSA manual, which the officers are trained by, is how they go about getting their probable cause to arrest you. Are you showing nystagmus during the eye test? Are you showing balance issues during the walk and turn and the one-leg stand test? By not giving them these, it may not be enough to get the case dismissed, but you are helping yourself fight against the officer's probable cause determination.